This is The Basketball Show with Shane the Hammer Hill. What they gonna say next?
Hello and welcome to The Basketball Show. I'm Nathan Stremple, stepping in for Jo Healy. Now we'll get to her in a moment, but it is my absolute pleasure to be joined by the great man Shane Hill.
Good to have you back, mate.
Mate, it's wonderful
Hey,
to step in.
when I see you, I just see those cheeks. For those who saw our earlier years of The Basketball Show, there was a lot of poking going on, and Jo definitely doesn't want me near those cheeks.
Jo doesn't want you poking her at all.
Right.
I like that throwback reference to the poke. Little update on a serious note. Update News Corp this week, mate. Just genuinely want to say, are you okay?
All good, mate. All good. Got captured with the bag of fruit on, so a bit dusty, but no, all good. All good.
Good to hear you're doing all right. Big thank you to the people that make it possible for us to be here today. That's TCL Mobile, 2K23 and UPCOZ. And obviously our media partners, News Corp and KO Freebies. Their man Matt Logue, under the pump this week, can't join us. So it's just you and me, Hammer.
Busy. He is busy, but lots to talk about. And what about Jo?
Well, you say I'm in the seat, right? Last time I filled in, everyone's questions were, where's Jo Healy? She's much better than I am.
So.
Much better offer from her this week, though.
Well, she's over at the Super Bowl. Have a look at that. That's her seat. There's no doubt. We just didn't get the wine in her hand that she no doubt has been putting back. And then she's off to the NBA All-Star game. So, out and about. She goes to the Summer League in the NBA. On the big bucks, that's what she does. Surely
having a good time. I like to think this is the best seat I get offered, but she's got one better today. So we look forward to seeing Jo Healy back here. Not next week, the week after. You'll see me again next week. But let's get underway with all the biggest basketball issues. Thanks to our friends at TCL. It is time for the starting five, hottest five topics in basketball. And Hammer, I want to know, is there an NBL player that didn't have a great year but might be better suited to a different team next season?
Well, I reckon that's what we're going to find out in the off-season, isn't it? But there's one that came to mind. I was watching the game Perth play against Cairns, and I haven't been a big fan of Brady Manick. Haven't been. He started off really slowly, started to warm up. We know he can shoot the ball. You know, he's a pick and pop guy, not a great defender, not a great rebounder. But if he is going to get signed next year, he needs to be in a program like the Kings. He needs to be next to Xavier Cook, somebody who can defend, do a whole lot more, a program that is based on their defence but wants to play more up-tempo as well. And then I think he could probably fit in and play a role. I think he's better than Suarez. And that would be an upgrade for the Sydney Kings, I think.
Better rebounders around him.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Cooks does, and he does everything, doesn't he? So, and that's what Perth really missed, and you know we'll get onto that in a minute. But just didn't have that defence and the other positions covered that allowed him to be able to do what he does.
Well, put him next to a league MVP. Anyone looks good. Let's talk about Perth. Give you your summary on them as they're now knocked out and their season's over.
Well, disappointing, obviously, a team that's had so much success over the last 20 years for them to to finish so poorly, really, and not make the top four.
Again.
Yeah, fifth. It's like, with the budgets they've got and the teams. And, Danny Mills has got to start again. When you've spent so much money on Norton and Blanchfield, especially Norton as a marquee player, and then him really have no impact, in the last half of the season, and Blanchfield hardly played at, such an expense as well. And then you have Thomas and Matic. They're four positions that are key positions where you've spent significant money and you haven't been able to get it done. Thomas's defence, jeez, I reckon I could still score on Thomas. I saw him close out somebody and his feet were just like in mud. He couldn't move. That they need to be able to get. But you imagine a Hogue or a Bull Quoll in that for cheaper amounts into that Perth team and what they would be capable of being able to do.
Well, the Bryce Cotton citizenship, always the big conversation there. If that does come, it changes the mix. Another team, though, recently knocked out. Perth were good enough to come in and off the back of an epic fourth quarter from Bryce Cotton, they ended South East Melbourne's season.
Talk about disappointing. I mean, I said on the show last week, there is no way South East Melbourne lose this game. And at three-quarter time, they're up double figures and you're like, yep, this is exactly where it's going. Then they give up 41 points And, they've put out different things during the year saying their defence isn't a problem and tried to critique commentators and say, no, you've got it all wrong. To give up 41 points, in a final, on your home floor, is absolutely unbelievable. And I thought they were going to be good because they actually recruited really well. I thought all three imports were really good fits for what they did. Big Source in the middle, great job re-signing him. But Trey Cal, I thought their point guard was good. Obviously, you got Mitch Creek. They've got all the pieces to be able to get it done, but you've got to start to ask questions now with a full-strength team, double-figure lead, three-quarter time, and you can't get it done.
What's the problem then if you like the pieces?
What is the problem? I don't know. What is it?
Well, if you say you like all their pieces,
is that a loaded question?
Get it done? I just want your expert opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's what they have to ask themselves. What's the problem? How does that happen? Because I like their pieces. I like what they did. And I was pretty confident they were going to be able to get that done. During the season, they had a lot of injury problems. So you sort of forgive them for some of those pieces. You're like, if only they could get their team back on the court. And they did. And it did not work. Maybe
not for long enough. Maybe that's the answer. If they bring the pieces back, they get another shot next season. Broke off, hopefully he gets a healthy run out as well as another piece you didn't mention. Move on to the NBA. Lots of movement in the NBA, some relevant, some irrelevant. I want to know, has any of these trades, any of these player movement, moved the needle on a team becoming a championship threat?
I think it does. And for the people that watch our show all the time, they know that I've hated the whole Nets thing. When they had Harden and Kyrie and they're building this super team and you're like, this just isn't going to work. And I argue with Derek Rucker all the time about it because he's like, nah, just wait, they're going to win. The whole thing's imploded. But I do like Durant at Phoenix. I think they're legitimate. I think when you start to look at what pieces work with each other, I think him and Booker and Chris Paul a really, really good combination. Two guys that can make shots, but I think will work well together, as opposed to what we said about the Mavs, where you look at Luka and Kyrie together. It's just not the right fit. You've got two ball-dominant guards. I just don't think it's going to work long-term. But Phoenix get into that mix now with Denver in the West and Milwaukee and Boston in the East.
Exciting to watch. You haven't seen many guys that are top 15, top 20 all-time change teams when they're still in their prime with a lot to give.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I can't wait. I'm not sure. I mean, I think Russell going to the Lakers helps them, but is it enough? I don't know.
KD to the Suns, watch that space. Speaking of people changing teams, WNBL, you said last week, Shane, only two teams could win it. One of those teams has added a two-time Olympian in Leilani Mitchell.
Interesting. I mean, she's been a superstar, hasn't she? She's a legend, not only here, but also in the WNBA. But big ask, with Magin out, I guess they were probably getting a bit desperate about who they could actually bring in. But it's going to be a big challenge for Leilani, as great as she has been, to be able to come back at this age after having a baby. I've got nothing but respect and admiration for her having a crack, but it's going to be tough for her. She's going to need to get a lot of trainings and a lot of games under her belt to be able to compete with the top teams. Look forward to it.
Yeah, she'll have to hit that ground running. Great story, another mother in the league. We'll see at what level she's at very shortly, and that is the TCL starting five. We move into crystal gazing. It's time to welcome the main man, Derek Rucker, to join us. Derek, how are you, mate?
Very well, Nathan. Hammer, how are you?
Mate, excited to be joined with you and the great man once again, and excited to hear your thoughts of where the NBL finals sit now with crystal gazing. So let's jump into it. Wednesday night, Sydney have had a decent wait here. They welcome Cairns to town.
Well, this is going to be interesting, D, because obviously Cairns have played a couple of games just to get to this point. Having both Pinder and McCall out obviously hurts their chances because they're playing against the tough Sydney Kings team that's been on fire. The only thing that is a question mark for the Kings, sometimes when you have 10 days off, you have a little bit of rust, and the Kings have been far better on the road than what they have been at home. For me, I still think that they're going to be able to play their way through that. I think the Sydney Kings are the favourites to win the championship, and I think it's theirs to lose starting on Wednesday night, D.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, and I agree with the theory that they may be a little bit game rusty. Losing Pinder is a big loss for Cairns because I thought he was the real foil for the MVP, Xavier Cooks. Without him in the lineup, that puts a lot of pressure on Sam Wardenberg to be able to defend Xavier Cooks, and I'm not sure he's quite up to that level yet. I've got Sydney winning game one. They'll probably get off to a slow start, Hammer. But yeah, Sydney for me in game one, they'll hold it down.
I think the other thing too, D, is when you take two starters out and you bring those guys off the bench, you just don't have the same depth over a 3-game series against the quality and the depth of somebody like the Sydney Kings. So it's going to be tough for them, and I would have loved to have seen them with a full-strength team because this would have been an amazing series.
Well, DJ Hogue was massive to get them there. A lot will rest on his shoulders. We'll check that out Wednesday night. And then we move into Thursday where we have game 2. Tasmania now hosting the New Zealand Breakers. Both of them having to wake up at 3 a.m. to travel. New Zealand getting game 1, and we know Tasmania without their point guard going in. What do you think, Derek?
Nathan, get the ATM card out. Load up the UPCOZ account. Put all your money on Tasmania. Hammer, you heard me. Tasmania are getting this game. I know you love New Zealand all of a sudden now, but Tasmania are tough in situations like this. They're headstrong. They're going to be down there in Hobart ready to roll. Tasmania will win this game by at least 8 to 12 points.
Gamble responsibly, folks. Shane, any response?
Wow. That's some strong thoughts, and I know exactly where you're coming from because they've been like that not only this season but last season. They've been able to bounce back from some losses, and they've got a resilience to them that I understand what you're saying. But I think it's going to be a little bit closer than that. I still think it's a flip of the coin. I think the depth and the defensive toughness, but the ability to score for New Zealand and the confidence that they're able to play with. They've got a free swing here because they know if they lose, they're going back to New Zealand regardless. So all the pressure on Tasmania. I get what you're saying, D. I'm not saying you're going to be wrong. I just think this game's going to go down to the wire.
Time will tell. That is game 2, potentially a deciding game there, unless Tasmania can get it done, as Derek Rucker said. And then Friday night, we definitely have a game. Game 2 of Cairns, Sydney Kings. This one will be in Cairns. You've mentioned Sydney better on the road. Both of you have said Sydney game 1. Shane, what do you think about game 2?
They're going to compete, Cairns, but unless they get McCall back, I think it's just going to be a little bit more difficult, just with the amount of games that are accumulating as well. They had those 2 games. This will be the 4th game in a week for them. They've got that extra travel from Cairns on top of that down to Sydney, and then they both travel back. I think it's tough. I think it'll be a close game. And again, Sydney are just unbelievable. I don't think Sydney get enough respect for how well they play on the road over the last 2 years.
I just see it like this, Shane. This game is really going to depend on whether Cairns can push Sydney in game 1. If Cairns let Sydney just off the hook and blow them out and find their rhythm, then Sydney are sweeping this series 2-0. I don't care what happens up in Cairns, how they play. Sydney are just going to be too good. So realistically, look, I agree. Sydney are ultimately going to be in the grand final. And I think they're going to load up and play New Zealand after New Zealand knock off Tassie in game 3. And now we have Sydney and New Zealand in the grand final. And that is what the league deserves.
I agree totally with that. I think it'll be a great series. Disappointed that Cairns, sort of limped to the finish line after having such an exciting season with a couple of their key players out. But New Zealand are probably the only team, based on what we're seeing, that have a legitimate chance to test the Sydney Kings. So I think we're on the same page, boys.
Well, there you go. Potential games 3, both on Sunday, if required. The prediction from both Derek and Shane is a grand final between the Sydney Kings and New Zealand Breakers, emphasising in this new format, finishing top 2 is pretty important. Little caveat to watch though, let's see what DJ Hogue can do, because he really needs to put Cairns on his shoulder if they are going to compete. But that is crystal gazing. Moving into points made, brought to you by our friends at UPCOZ. All the big trades in the NBA. Let's get Shane and Derek's opinion. Let's start with the biggest of them all, KD to the Suns.
What do you think, D?
Woo! It was something else. I didn't know what to think. I kind of suspected something was going to go down. And when Kyrie was moved, I felt KD was going to be like, okay, it's time for me to get up out of here. I can't be here trying to make this ship work. I've got Ben Simmons, who exactly isn't the same Ben Simmons from 3 years ago. I've got Royce O'Neal. Like, I've got to get up out of here. And what a great destination for him to find. There are only two places I thought that he could go with a chance to win a championship and be able to be who he is. One was Golden State, and the other was right here with Phoenix. And Phoenix now, everybody's kind of blown them up a bit more than I have. Look, they're going to still have to work really hard to win the Western Conference Championship. And I certainly don't have them as the favorites to win the title. But boy, did their fortunes turn in a heartbeat, Hammer.
Well, I just love to hear you talking about anything but the Nets, mate, because for the last couple of years, all you wanted was Harden and Kyrie and KD. They're going to win it all. They're going to be unbelievable. I'm going to be swallowing my words, but at least KD's found a place that he actually fits. I think with him and Booker and Chris Paul, I think they're going to be a legitimate chance, and excited to see him land in a spot where he actually fits and he can succeed.
Well, Hammer, check this out, though. Harden is in a perfect situation. What are you talking about? He's playing great basketball. His team is like third in the East. They're a legitimate chance to win as well.
Don't deflect it, mate.
Kyrie is going off.
I'm talking
Kyrie is
about
going off in Dallas.
The Nets team that you said were going to win it all and they were going to be great together and everything else that blew up because they all failed. Maybe they're in better positions now, but rest in peace, the Nets.
I just love that look down the camera there from Derek. I think that's the look that he gave anyone during his playing career when they said they could guard him. Let's move on to another trade. It's the Lakers getting D'Angelo Russell. Is this enough for LBJ to challenge and add another championship to his already significant resume?
D'Angelo Russell, Shane, is one of my least favorite players of all time. He plays with zero energy. He is listless. He is selfish. He is just everything I do not value in a point guard. However, he's been on a run the past 2 months. He claims he's changed. He's more mature. Oh, when he first got to LA and he snitched on some of his teammates, he said he was just a young boy at that time. I'm willing to give him a second chance. Is LeBron going to get frustrated with him at some point and want his butt up out of there as well? Probably. But you've got two personality types that are very similar now, and I don't think you can have two of these guys with Russell and Toothpick Man, Anthony Davis. I just don't like the mix. They're better, they're more talented, but, they're still behind a number of teams in the West in terms of coming out of there.
Hey, what's up with your boy, Anthony Davis, when LeBron got his record and he sat on the bench? What was up with that? He didn't even stand up.
He explained it. Stop trying to create a story where there's no story. He said he was disappointed because they were losing to OKC at that time.
His boy just got a record, mate. You couldn't stand up and fake it for your boy. He sat there like a sook. They got zero chance, mate. I don't care what you say. That was enough for me, but we've been saying that all year, so whatever. Next.
Right, moving on from Toothpick Man, is there any other trades that stand out to you, or even trades that didn't happen? Rumours of Pat Riley sleeping and therefore Derek.
Pat Riley did not fall asleep. Stop picking on my man for being that old that he fell asleep and that trade didn't happen. Surely that's not true, D.
Well, I don't know about that one, but I know Portland tried to trade a lemon over to Golden State with Gary Payton II. They tried to take advantage of the heartstrings of the Golden State Warriors. The trade was rescinded, and then today Golden State said, "No, that's all right. We'll take him, and we'll get him right." So that was a bit of a shady deal by Portland. But overall, I thought it was a very exciting trade deadline. And once again, Hammer, with all the news around it, it points to the fact that perhaps the NBL needs to look at some type of player movement during the course of the season.
Have to.
You've been saying it all along, gents. It's on the radar. With that player movement, another one the NBL made me look at is the All-Star game. It still happens in the NBA. Our girl Jo Healy's over there. Do these trades affect the East-West selections for the All-Star game?
Who cares? Let's move on. NBL, mate. NBL? Let's talk about... I don't want to talk... Mate, we're banning anything about All-Stars on this show. It's all fluff. It's all rubbish.
I hate the All-Star game. I don't mind the three-point contest, though. I can watch the three-point contest.
Yeah, I'm with that. Talk about stocks. Come on.
Well, let's talk about
please.
NBL players then. Is there anywhere, as we're getting the point into the season, 4 teams left, free agency are hot on everyone's lips now. Are there NBL players that you two gentlemen would buy stocks in right now?
Well, Dee and I have been really hot on Bull Qual for the last few months. And he's been much better this year after his Rookie of the Year season last year. His percentages have gone up, particularly inside the three-point line. But he's a 3-and-D guy. I think he's going to become awesome and a really big part of what Cairns have done. So he's going to be a hot free agent. You want to buy him now. Luke Travers is sort of at the other extreme for me. Everyone's talking about him going to the NBA, and I think he's upside in the long term to play in the NBA, which I think at some stage he will. Right now, for what he's doing in the NBL, Qual is further ahead. There's no doubt about that. And we saw that in a big game where both teams needed these guys to stand up. Qual was able to get that done. And because Travis isn't that half-court player that can really find a way to execute, even though his three-point percentage has gone up this year, that's been impressive, it's been tough for him. What do you think, Dee?
I agree with you, and I thought Bull Qual was sensational yesterday. His stock is only going to rise, especially if Cairns are unable to retain Keanu Pender. That's going to open up more opportunities for him. So right now is a perfect time to get in on him. Another person who I really like is DJ Mitchell from the Brisbane Bullets. Now, he's a free agent, Shane. There's a chance he could be out in the market. I thought he was one of Brisbane's best players this season. There was definitely a better player with him out there on the floor. If he were to go to another program where his role was more defined, less expansive, and he knew what was required of him, he could really shoot up in value because he was almost a 50-40-90 guy this year, Shane. Shot the ball exceptionally well from the three. He's got some defensive things to work on, but he's still a relatively inexperienced pro. And we know what his father was able to do, Shane. I think his father may have caught a couple of alley-oops on you back in the day. So it's in the DNA. And I think DJ can have a really long and outstanding career.
I played with his old man. I threw him a few, or maybe he got a couple of my missed shots. But anyway, same thing. I agree, good kid. But Qual, for me, could be the difference between a team trying to win a championship and just that key piece that fits in and takes them to championship contender. No doubt. Tough kid.
Watch that space. Justin Schull, new coach in Brisbane. Can he retain DJ Mitchell? And last season, it was Adam Ford taking a pay cut to retain Keanu Pender and Bull Cole. He's not going to be able to do that this year. We'll see if they can hold on to them. And all of that, thank you to UPCOZ. Make sure you check out UPCOZ.com for all your NBL odds, but obviously player movement in the NBA. Check them out as things move around now and they head into the All-Star game. And that is points made.
Stop making the All-Star game.
UPC
Mate, you won't be back next week. There's no All-Star games here.
Moving on to In-Depth, brought to you by 2K23. And with the Perth Wildcats being knocked out, I know what they did or didn't restart that streak of making the postseason. We've got a man on the ground in Perth, Nick Lakovich. Nick, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
Come on, Lacko, give us the rundown, mate. What happened to Perth? That's a massive underachievement, right?
Yeah, I think absolutely. The measurement of Perth's success historically has always been about playoffs and finals. I think there's clearly evidence there that you can't get through any kind of a deep run into the playoffs without having two major areas that you're elite in, which is defense and rebounding. They were exposed through the course of the entire season, and in particularly in moments through the playoffs where they were relying on the heroics of a Bryce Cotton to bail them out. We saw that in the fourth quarter against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. And credit goes to Cairns in their ability to contain him and get the ball out of his hands and throw bodies at him once he put the ball on the floor to force him into a facilitator. Now, when you don't have the depth of talent that Perth have to consistently be able to put up numbers and challenge them, and they challenge their depth to be able to score and finish, this is the result, an early exit in the play-in.
So a lot of talk about the streak ending last year. They finished fifth again. They've made the play-in, but not the finals. Does the streak restart at one, or have they again missed the playoffs?
Well, in my opinion, Nathan, and again, it goes back to what are our standards, what are our values, and what do we accept? And historically, the Wildcats have never accepted anything outside of being in the playoffs and in the top four. My thoughts is that, unfortunately, the streak extends. The Wildcats got an opportunity based on a play-in system. They weren't able to advance into the top four, which, as we all know, the top four is where the champions are generally crowned.
Lucky, you've got a great basketball mind and a long history in the game, not only as a player but a coach. But if you're Danny Mills right now, what do you do? What do you add? Where have they gone wrong? And what are you going after to give the Wildcats a chance to win a title again?
Well, I mean, already that evaluation and that assessment needs to happen immediately to try to get your finger and your hands on the next level talent. I know there's some young Aussies out there at St Mary's, Cole Bowen and a UPCOZ who are West Australian kids. And when you've sent a clear message that guys like Blanchfield and Norton aren't going to extend their careers under a John Rillie, even though I thought Mitch Norton did a tremendous job stepping up in key moments when called upon. Blanchfield's career looks like it's done under Rillie, even though he has another year left. Clearly, there needs to be an emphasis on defence and rebounding. The Nick Kays, the John Mooneys, the Miles Plumleys of the world, there's a recipe and a DNA in this league that translates to success. Those are the types of players. You look at New Zealand with a Brantley and Pardon. There's no surprise why they're the best defensive team in the competition. Pardon doesn't escape past the keyway in the paint to score. He patrols the paint to rebound. He understands where his bread is buttered, and hence the reason why they're so successful.
Let's put names to them, Lacko. Let's put names to them. Who needs to be there? Is it a Pinder? Is it a Ball Quoll? Who do they have to get after now?
Well, I think certainly those two names that you mentioned would be the top of the free agency list, without a doubt. And if you're looking at what Adam Ford has done, he extended and grew that program by an additional 9 wins from last season to this season. Why? He invested in good, young, hungry local talent that had length, size, athleticism, and versatility on the perimeter defensively. That is the area the Wildcats need to invest in quickly, because there's no guarantees of getting back into the playoffs, because the league is growing fast and the talent is improving.
You talk about investment. It may not have been the piece that they needed to add either defence or rebounding, but I thought a good sign was that they were happy to invest to bring in an elite talent like Ty Webster. You see that as a pass or a fail, bringing in Ty?
No, I think it's definitely a pass. And I spoke to John just post that signing, and I thought when you have talent that knocks on your door and you have an ability to pick it up, you figure it out as you go. He is an elite competitor in this league that has a proven resume of succeeding. Now, the backbone isn't about whether we've got enough depth in the backcourt department with Corey and Ty and Bryce, and potentially, Harris is a development there, and Luke Travers who can carry the ball and facilitate. It's got to be building the front court, whether it's domestically or high-level international talent.
Last question for you, Lacko. Can anybody beat the Sydney Kings?
Mate, great question. And I think they have cemented themselves, rightly so, as the championship favourites once again. But for my opinion, and I've discussed this with numerous people, New Zealand for me is the team that can knock heavily on their door and take this thing to a 5-game series come grand final time. They cover the areas where New Zealand seem to have advantages in. And I love the ability and the development and the growth of the McDowell White. He is an elite facilitator and playmaker in the league. He's proven it right now. And I think that he has got some special qualities, the shot making and then the defense and the rebounding. New Zealand are the only team, in my opinion, that can compete with the Kings come grand final time.
See, that's why we brought on the great man.
Great
for
shout.
that sort of analysis. Thank you. Thank you, mate.
Lacko, I appreciate your thoughts. Nice to have someone else rooting for a New Zealand Sydney NBL Grand Final. That is in depth by 2K23.
Pleasure.
That's all we've got time for this week. Hammer, thanks. Great to join you once again.
Yeah, looking forward to these games too. The playoffs have started. Is the finals or the playoffs? I'm a bit confused about the whole thing, but the real stuff starts.
Potato, potato. It's a good time to be a Hoops fan. Big thank you to the people that make the basketball show possible. TCL, 2K23, UPCOZ, and our media partners News Corp and KO Freebies. This is Shane Hill. I'm Nathan Stremple, and we will see you next week.
This is a co-production by News Corp Australia and Closer Sports.